Hi and welcome to Write with Alex. Today I'm going to talk about dialogue tags, and this might be a niche topic, but it is something that I think will help you a lot while writing dialogue. And if you are struggling with dialogue and think that they are a bit boring and repetitive, then this video is for you. And this is something that has helped me a lot since I learned about this. And learning about this will not only improve the dialogue itself, but it will also make the process of writing it more fun and easy. And I'm really excited with this topic, so let's get started. So by now you are probably wondering what is a dialogue tag. And a dialogue tag describes who says what and how it is said. And an example of this is, I want to eat cake, Iris said. And the words Iris said is the dialogue tag. And you can use different words than said, like demanded or whined, and a dialogue tag can be longer or shorter, and we will look at some ways that it will vary later in this video. And every language has different formats or different rules for where to put a comma and what kind of quotation marks to use. And in my examples I will use US English, but if you are writing in a different language or for a different market, then please go and look how this is done in your language. There are usually a book about correct spelling where you can find this, but the easiest way is to just grab a book off your shelf and look how they do it, because all published books follow the same rules. So the most important thing about dialogue tags that I want you to take with you from this is that the word said is neutral. This is the most commonly used dialogue tag, and sometimes it can be used for an entire conversation as the only variation of dialogue tags. And if you don't believe me, then go and look at some of the books and see which one is most common, because this, since it is neutral, it's easy to it doesn't make a mark, like it's easy to just read past it. It's like the word and or. You don't put a lot of emphasis on them, and that's why the word said works really great for dialogue tags. And of course, you can't use only said, you have to use other words as well. And hopefully, when you have written a lot of dialogue, it will feel more natural where you change and how many times you will use said and other words. And something that really brought this home for me was when I was studying dialogue tags, I looked at the book Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and this is a book that has really beautiful and carefully crafted language, and even he uses said for an entire conversation. And I thought that if Patrick can do it, then anyone can do it. Some advice will tell you that you should use as many different words for your dialogue tags as possible, and this is a piece of advice that I really don't agree with. If you use a lot of different words, and especially like complicated ones or ones that aren't very common, it looks weirder. It doesn't look great. And I think it's important to use said as the basis and then branch out sometimes, and often you need to use other ones within a conversation. Like I said you can use said for just a whole conversation, and you can, but a lot of times you need a bit more different tags, but just don't overdo it. And it is important how things are said, but there are more ways than dialogue tags to show this. And one of those is to show them by the expressions and the gestures of the character, like saying that they smile or frown. And you can also do this by showing the character's inner monologue, so how they are thinking, what they are thinking about what is said, what they are saying, and what other people are saying. The second most important thing about dialogue tags is that you need to switch up where you place them. And for a lot of people, it comes naturally to only lean on one way to do this, and that is the same as the example I showed earlier. I want to eat cake, Iris said. So to have the dialogue first and then the tag. And you might have noticed that when you're reading a book and someone does this repeatedly for too many times, you can notice it and it feels off, and we want to avoid that. So let me show you some ways that you can vary the placement of the dialogue tag. So now we know why, but how do you do this? So there are three main ways to switch the place of the dialogue tag. First one is to have a dialogue and then the tag. And this is the same example that I've used earlier in this video. I want to eat cake, Iris said. The second way is to place the tag in the middle between two dialogue pieces. So you had dialogue and then a tag and or a sentence and then another dialogue. And this can look like, I want to eat cake, Iris said. It looks so good. And the third way to do this is to have a tag or a sentence first and then have the dialogue. And one example of the tag first is, Iris said, I want to eat cake. And an example with the sentence first is, Iris looked at her father. I want to eat cake. And these three are not equal in weight. You want to use the first one as your basis because that is the most common one, and then switch it up every fourth, fifth line with one of the other ones. And the more you practice this, then the better you will get at getting a feeling for when you switch and what to switch to. And as I said, it's also really good to look at how other people are doing this. And I do think this is one of the key things to make a dialogue flow well, so this is important. So the last thing I want to say is never ever use exclamation points. You shouldn't do this anywhere in your book, but especially not in dialogue. And if you look at published books, you will notice that this doesn't happen, or at least only once in a book. And the reason for this is that using exclamation points in dialogue, it feels jarring and it makes it almost sound childish, and we don't want that. And if you look at these two examples, does the exclamation point really add something in this sentence? I didn't want to, they shouted. Or I didn't want to, they shouted. It's exact same structure, but just with or without an exclamation point. And we already have the shouter part in the dialogue tag, so we don't need the exclamation point. If you feel like that you need the exclamation point to really make the reader know that they are shouting, then for one, it's enough to just say that they are shouting, that the reader will get that. The second is that you can use gestures and expressions of the characters to amplify how they are portraying this shouting and how they are reacting to each other. And you can also tell this by the overall feel of a dialogue. So when the tension wraps up and someone starts shouting, the reader hopefully will already expect it because that is where the dialogue is taking us. So usually it does require a little bit less than you might think to show that someone is shouting. So if you're still doubting this, then try this yourself. Write the dialogue with a lot of exclamation points and then write the same dialogue without them and see how they feel and compare them to each other. Is the one with exclamation points really better or clearer, or are you saying the same things but without them? And this is something that's interesting and fun to keep in mind while you are reading. If you come across an exclamation point, which will happen at some point, I always notice this because I get annoyed, I don't think it should be there. And also it kind of shows poorly edited books if there's a lot of exclamation points. And if you do come across one, look at how it's used and how do you feel when you see it. Do you think that it adds to the tension and the emotion of the scene, or could it really just do without? So that was everything for today. To recap what I've talked about, the dialogue tag is something that describes who says what and how it is said. And the most neutral word to use for dialogue tags is the word said. And we've also learned that it's important to switch up where you place your dialogue tags, and there are a couple of different ways to do this. And then lastly, never use an exclamation point. Just don't. And now after learning about this, the best way to really use this in your own writing is to practice doing this. And I have a video just for that, Write With Me dialogue tags. And in that video, we will do writing exercises together to try different ways of writing and placing dialogue tags that will really help you see how they work in a dialogue. And I highly recommend going to that one and watching it. And I hope that this has been helpful to you and that it can give you a new perspective of what can be improved in a dialogue and what happens if it doesn't flow well. This is one of the ways to improve that. And I really hope that this will make it easier and more fun for you to write a dialogue. And thank you so much for joining me today, and happy writing!